pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Yojimbo にどうだ腕は今見せるああ面白いもん見せてるか
地獄の入り口で顔を合わせたこの二人。
このざまだだから言わねえこっちゃねえ6人ぐらいじゃ手不足だところであの6人とてもうまく料理されてたなあんないい腕を持ったやつはこの近くにはおめえしかいねえそれでもしかするとあの6人叩き殺したのはおめえじゃねえかと思ってね
刀かピストルか宿命の対決。
あんまりこっちに来るんじゃねえ
The pod bay doors are open. Thank you so very much for joining us once again. I'm your host, film critic and film historian for TalkMovieToMe.com, Doug Heller. And seated with me on the other side of town is Jerry Dean Roberts, film critic for ArmchairCinema.com, ArmchairOscars.com, and OverThinkingOscars.wordpress.com. Jerry, how's your silk warehouse?
Go home to your mother and eat gruel for the rest of your life.
So today, in what is becoming a tradition for me, it's my Japanese samurai picks for January. Last year I chose the Lone Wolf and Cub series. This year I have chosen Yojimbo and Sanjuro, and as a bonus, I will talk a little bit about the very peculiar Zatoichi meets Yojimbo, which exists.
I'm familiar with the Zatoichi films, but not that.
Yeah.
This is, by the way,
with Toshihiro Mifune. Like it's.
By the way, this is celebrating 60th anniversary.
Yes, that's why I picked it.
This was. Let me tell you something. Akira Kurosawa probably could have sued George Lucas because this movie is his entire career. Because if you watch Star Wars and you watch Indiana Jones, basically Akira Kurosawa.
It's Hidden Fortress and Yojimbo. Yeah. Throw in some Joseph Campbell mythology and you're solid gold.
Yeah, I mean there are so many freaking movies that come out of this. I mean, I'm sitting there, I'm watching it, I'm thinking, okay, Star Wars comes out of this. Indiana Jones comes out of this. I'm thinking anything Tarantino did comes out of this.
Fistful of Dollars.
In particular, Kill Bill
literally comes out of this.
Which one?
Fistful of Dollars is a remake.
I was going to
this.
mention that. I was going to make a big production out of that because I was sitting there watching Yojimbo the other night, and he walks by the Undertaker.
Yeah.
He said, "Give me 3 coffins." This is one of the best scenes. Leads to one of the best scenes Eastwood ever did. Is a scene where those guys are messing with his mule, and he's walking. He walks by the Undertaker. "Give me 3 coffins ready," and he walks up and. Nobody monologues like Eastwood.
That's true.
Nobody. And he has that great line where he says, he says, "I know you guys are just playing around, but see, the mule, he just doesn't get it." He ends up shooting these guys. He walks back by the Undertaker's. "My mistake. 4 coffins."
And that is lifted. There's a similar scene in Yojimbo.
Almost directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost directly. Lifted from Yojimbo.
And what is it? And going off of that, the remakes of Fistful of Dollars, Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis, The Quick and the Dead with Sharon Stone. Yes, it is. They both are.
They both are. Quick and the Dead was so stupid. I saw Quick and the Dead.
I saw it when
opening
it came
weekend,
out. Yeah.
and I knew nothing about it.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater.
But when they did that shooting where they've got the Fearless Fosdick size holes in everybody,
well, remember, The Quick and the Dead was Sam Raimi, so
yeah,
you do have to take some of that with the pill that is Sam Raimi, and Sam Raimi is weird.
But it's like, when I was seriously, I'm sitting there watching the movie thinking, I should not be thinking of Fearless Fosdick while I'm watching this because he's got these giant holes in him.
And the funny thing is, Yojimbo inspired all of those things, yet it was also very much derived from the Dashiell Hammett book, Red Harvest. Which was also very loosely adapted into Miller's Crossing by the Coen brothers.
Right.
And that was from, I think, 1920 or 21. So it was
and a lot of Blood Simple. And a lot of Blood Simple, too, because... and it also... We're going to mention every movie this thing inspired. This helps me understand Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence a little better. Because the acting style of the Japanese acting style is very broad. It's very big. It's very you've got huge gestures, loud, pronunciations of loud dialogue.
Very hard emphasis on things.
Right, and that was very open. That was very much a part of that movie. This movie is, and I got really interested in this, The Lone Warrior. When have we not seen that? Who wanders in, and he's the Ronin, he's the samurai without a master, and he goes by the Bushido code, which the Bushido is, forgive me for mangling this, but Boshi, which means warrior, and Do, which means way.
Yeah, way of the warrior.
This is the way.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm interested in this thing about using this warrior code as a religious text, as a religious sort of thing. And
I love how it's basically a religious thing, and then you come to Sanjuro, and he is just not... He's the epitome of what you would expect from a samurai without ever realizing that he is the epitome of everything you would want from a samurai. He is having so much fun with this life or death saving of this town. And he's only there because he threw a stick up in the air at a fork in the road, and that's where the direction it pointed.
I love when the townsfolk in Yojimbo are facing off against each other. He's sitting on this tower,
And he's just
just
laughing at them because none
just
of them are good at anything that they're doing. They just
no.
just randomly swing their swords around and hit people.
And the only thing that really brings him into this is the fact that somebody has a gun,
Yeah.
and he doesn't really care until that woman. Well, they're going to take her baby,
No, no, no.
and
They took her away from her husband because, uh, well, they liked her.
Mhm.
And the husband, uh, decided that if he couldn't be with her because they took her away from him by force and he couldn't get her back, he built a little house next to where they were keeping her so that he could be near her,
Mhm.
but also within earshot of them basically raping her every night. So
Mhm.
he had to hear
it
that every
it
night.
became something else to him.
Yeah.
There's a look on his face. Mifune is very good in this movie. He's very good in both
Good in
films.
everything.
Because he builds the character through these two films.
Yeah.
The altruistic hero. Um, because he doesn't care. He's just having fun. And then this comes into it, and I think it kind of gets. It seemed to me that it kind of got real to him.
Right. He was just playing with people who thought they were gangsters but weren't. He was just kind of trying to bring them down because their hubris had kind of ruined the functionality of the town.
Mhm.
And he just didn't like that. And he's like, oh, I'll stick around.
Yeah.
And basically playing both sides against the middle
Mhm.
so that the town could emerge without any gangsters. I love it. I
Right.
love it. It's a brilliant plan, and he tells nobody anything.
Yeah.
He just goes about his business.
He doesn't even tell them his name.
No, he makes one up.
Yeah.
Sanjuro something, which means 30-year-old wheat field or something like that. And he goes, but
Even though he's pushing 40.
truth be told, I'm really almost 40. Uh,
Yeah.
so I call him Sanjuro because in both movies he kind of gives that name. But by the time Zatoichi meets him, he's got a different name. They're referring to him as a different
I
name.
have not seen I've not seen that version. I've seen a lot of the Zatoichi movies, but I've not seen that one.
It's
Zatoichi's the blind
basically,
swordsman.
yes, Zatoichi meets Yojimbo is basically an amalgamation of the two plots from Yojimbo and Sanjuro, squished together, but adding in Zatoichi and having it be from his perspective. So he finds Yojimbo in a similar role that he's been in before as the bodyguard to a crime family. You find out later he is working to bring it down from the inside, and Zatoichi doesn't know that, and he's starting to work on it from the outside.
Mhm.
And eventually they kind of meet in the middle and
Yeah.
figure out what the other one's doing. But for a little while, you don't really know if they're going to end up fighting each other or not. And
I want to tell you, I drew a lot. I don't know this, but I drew a lot of comparisons to the Mandalorian. A guy who is kind of wandering the world. He's part of something, but
he's just a simple man trying to make his way in the galaxy.
he is. He is. And he's cold-blooded. You know, I can bring you in hot or I can bring you in cold. He takes a job.
Right.
He makes a living wherever he can make it. And there's no personal investment until there has to be.
Until there's a child in the middle of it.
Right. And then his perception has to change.
Mm-hmm.
what I like, and I thought of, I think the episode was called Sanctuary, where he goes to that little farming village.
Oh yeah.
And I thought of the end of both of the, I thought of that at the end of both of these films, because at the end of both of these films, he has to leave.
Mm-hmm. And he doesn't really have to, but he chooses to because he knows he can't.
He can't be part
sit
of this.
around there. Yeah, he's
Right.
he's part of the solution. He's not part of the ongoing restoration.
It's like, now I've got to leave them to this.
Right.
And it's just kind of interesting. He is forever wandering. A mind, a person who's just forever voyaging.
He's like
he can't.
Kane in Kung Fu.
Right. You can't have roots.
Right.
Literally, almost, it's like wandering forever between the winds.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tragic story.
So you're going to
Of
be a
this
bum,
man.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what they
Without
call
a
it?
job, without legal tender, without a home, you're a bum.
It's going to wander forever between the winds.
Yeah.
So it's a very tragic, very sad story. But he's not.
He's not a sad
uncaring.
character,
Right.
The way of his life is sad to us, but maybe it's not to him. Maybe he is very fulfilled going into
I don't know,
towns
at the end,
and helping.
I don't know. At the end of both movies, he looked pretty sad having to leave.
Yeah, but
I thought he didn't want to, but he knows that it's not. This is not the place for him.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of a parental thing in that he has to leave because they can't handle their business. Because if he stays, they'll always put their business on him.
Right.
And, it will undo whatever he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I want to tell you the truth. I actually, if I had to choose between these two, I may have liked Sanjuro more.
Sanjuro's more fun.
Sanjuro's more fun, but it's also less of what you expect.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of fighting in it.
No.
There's
a lot of beautiful setup and a
Right.
lot of
it's all set up.
Yeah, and there's some really great subterfuge, and there's just it's a fun story because you don't there's no real burden of character introduction because you already know Sanjuro. So,
And you don't have to really know anything else.
Right, exactly. And just, I love in Sanjuro how he's just like, well, I might as well just stay to help you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's only 9 of us. No, there's 10.
No, there's 10.
like I'm in this just because I happened to be in this barn.
He has a lot of there's a lot of multitudes to his performance.
Mm-hmm.
And that how he feels at the moment tends to turn the tide of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like whatever he's thinking, whatever he's feeling, whatever he's experiencing, okay, that's the way the thing's going to turn.
Right.
Because they're looking to him for help.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're cowards.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Well, they.
I love the scene. I love the scene where he goes back in the cabin and then goes back in the little house and they're all hiding in the floor. And it's like a Three Stooges gag. They keep sticking their heads out of the floor.
It's like a clown car, but it's a floor.
Right.
Yeah. I love that their compound is directly next door to the enemy compound, and nobody knows. They figure it out as like, oh, okay, all right. Well, that's gonna make.
And
things
it's interesting.
easier.
I don't know if this is commonplace in the '60s, but they make comedy out of things that are horrifying. One of the first things you see in Yojimbo is a dog walking down the street with a severed hand in its mouth.
Yeah, and it's hilarious.
And the music is not dour and dark.
No, it's just kind of bouncy.
It's a happy, it's kind of bouncy. That stuff happens all through the movie. You're not sure because the tone keeps changing.
And
because it's
especially in Yojimbo, the tone is it's not consistent, but not in a jarring way. It changes when it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Because the music and he could be having fun in 1 second, and then something changes and he and the music and everything else just turns on a dime. And then it's life or death. And few directors could maintain that kind of a balance. And it's the other great expression of that kind of that style of writing and directing and everything is Indiana Jones. The American equivalent is Indiana Jones because it's funny, but it's also death-defying, and you're a little scared, but you're also laughing.
More so to The Man with No Name. Because that's also funny, and I think the character of the Man with No Name is closer to Sanjuro. Because
he is Sanjuro.
He has no history. He's just the kind of the specter who wanders in from the winds. Right.
And I'm kind of glad that they didn't adapt Sanjuro for a few dollars more. Like they just decided to start going with their own stories after that. But you could change the nationality of the cast, plant it back into Edo period Japan, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is Yojimbo 3. Like, it's easy to be done. It's really easily done.
And the commonality that they all have is that they seem to take place in a location that you do not recognize. John Ford's westerns always took place in Monument Valley, so you got used to the backgrounds. I don't recognize where Kurosawa's films take place because they never seem to take place in the same place.
Right, and they also when you start getting into things like Throne of Blood or Kagemusha, which we spoke about last year or 2 years ago at some point.
Or
Ron. The locations are ethereal. They're like they're there, but they don't feel real. Like you're a lot of the times Kurosawa's locations feel like a dream. Like they couldn't really exist.
Which Leone borrowed.
Oh yeah,
because a lot of his films take place in what looks like another planet.
Well, look at Once Upon a Time in the West for that. What was it? Sweetwater was the town, and I mean, generic as anything, could be in the middle of any desert anywhere in the world, except maybe the Sahara. or on the savannah, but you know what I mean. That's the way that they shot that. Actually, they were shooting it in Spain and I think Mexico or Arizona or New Mexico, Texas, somewhere in there, and the color of the dirt was different. So they were filming outside, and there was all this red dirt.
Yeah.
And then they go inside, and they had to take dirt from Spain, bring it over here, and throw it in the door behind. What was it? Charles Bronson, when he walks into this place, because they were two opposite ends of the world.
Yeah, I got the same thing with when they're in Sad Hill in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and they're at that cemetery, and it looks like a lunar landscape.
Hmm.
It does not look like any place you recognize. It's gray. It's that gray, a brownish gray of I think it's Mexico.
Yeah, I think so.
But it doesn't look like, you're not seeing mesas. It's not California.
Right.
You know, this movie has that. I don't know. Is this filmed outdoors? Was this filmed on a set? I have no idea. I thought it was just because it was a Japanese film that I didn't recognize any of this.
Yeah, it's not a. It's funny. It's a Japanese version of an old west town.
Yeah.
With the two big buildings on either end signifying the seats of power.
Hmm.
Which is what you get the church on one end of the street and City Hall on the other end of the street. And there's usually somebody in both of those places fighting each other.
Yeah.
And, Kurosawa was a very big Western fan, too. He loved American Westerns, silent Westerns, especially John Ford Westerns, as a matter of fact.
And it's complimentary because American Western directors love Kurosawa.
Yeah, it's really a very interesting give and take because several of his films were reworked into American Westerns. Magnificent Seven, Fistful of Dollars.
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Good, the Bad. Well, yeah, and handfuls
Probably
of
even
others.
probably even Rodriguez, even the Rodriguez trilogy. Once Upon a Time in Mexico probably even takes a lot, especially takes a lot from a little bit from Kurosawa, a little bit from John Woo. I mean, it's East taking from West and West taking from East. It's
Right. It's Kurosawa was probably one of the most Western of the classical Japanese directors.
Mhm.
He openly admitted to being very influenced by Hollywood. And quite unlike somebody like Kenji Mizoguchi or Yasujiro Ozu or
Ozu was more of a painter than a director to me.
Well,
He was just
Ozu. We'll get to him. I think this year. I have
Ozu
a few,
loved to
I have a few of his
Ozu loved to
photos.
come up with a plot that you could describe in one sentence, and then the rest of the movie is just him painting,
Yes,
with
and
colors
they're almost always
sets.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. The few that I've seen have been incredible.
Oh, yeah, I've seen probably about a half a dozen Ozu films, and oof. But yeah, like
Kurosawa.
Kurosawa really embraced the wider world of film. He was very impacted by Satyajit Ray from India. He was very influenced by John Ford, Howard Hawks. It's funny if you watch if you listen to the way that he does the dialogue, especially in this and Seven Samurai, it's very Hawksian. They overlap each other, and a lot of it. Kurosawa's sound design doesn't get, I think, the appreciation that it deserves because he was such a brilliant visualist that his sound and sound design and sound theories don't ever really get brought up. But he had some really innovative sound editing to go along with his really innovative storylines.
There's a lot of dialogue, but a lot of passages where there's no dialogue. What's interesting to me is that you can pull a lot of influence. You can see where the influence went. There are scenes in Yojimbo that are taken almost. They're homages to those scenes directly in other stuff.
Oh yeah.
The scene where he chases the little kid off with the sword. You know, he says that line that I opened with.
Yeah.
That's Kill Bill.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You know, when she's whipping that guy with the sword.
Little boys should not play with Yakuza. Now go home to your
This
mother.
is what happens when you fuck with the
around
Yakuza.
with the Yakuza. Go on home to your mother. Yeah, exactly. That is go home and eat gruel for the rest of your life.
There's a scene where the camera pushes right up to Mifune's face.
Mm-hmm.
That's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Uh-huh.
When he's in Cairo and he
Mm-hmm.
runs up and he runs right up to the camera. That's
Yep.
Raiders.
Yep.
You know, there's that scene where you've got him just standing in the middle of the street and there's dust just blowing,
Mm-hmm.
and his, you know, and that's the Man with No Name.
Mm-hmm.
And even further, that's Ahsoka.
Yeah.
There are comparisons now online to that episode of The Mandalorian with this film, and I mean, side by side.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when he's going into town.
Because
and
he's
you just see him
literally
standing.
playing both sides.
Right.
He took a job
Right.
from one and then teamed up with the person he was supposed to kill and then
Right.
overthrew the entire crooked regime. Yeah. The Ahsoka's,
And I don't-
the Jedi, I think was the episode's name.
The Jedi, yeah. I don't know if... Now, I know these things were really, really popular in Japan
Oh,
when they were
yeah.
released.
Oh, yeah.
And set off a trend that I think continues to this day, because the Japanese love genre films.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think this
And
helps
I
set that
love
off.
Japanese genre.
Yeah.
As you
Genre
may have
films-
guessed, I am a huge fan of samurai movies.
Well, genre films make up about probably 80% of the movies that they make.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I think it was inspired largely by him,
Mhm.
by the success of these films. To the point that I actually like Japanese films that start to kind of break away a little bit.
Yeah.
They're not genre films. But
Well, yeah, you when you get really into it, you get the samurai movies, the Yakuza movies, and odd, often food-based comedy movies.
I love the food-based movies. Eatrick
Tom
Man
Popo
was
is
one of my-
wonderful.
Tim Popo was wonderful. I love these movies. You know, just anything that takes place in a restaurant.
Shall We
and,
Dance is another one. It's
Yeah.
a Japanese movie from the 90s that was remade by Richard Gere.
Yeah.
In a terrible movie called Shall We Dance.
Yeah.
The Japanese version is magnificent. I love that movie.
But it's samurai movies, Yakuza movies, and food movies.
Yeah, pretty much. And horror movies.
Sometimes
movies.
you probably get all three in the same movie.
Yeah. You know, in a way, the one of the ones that we talked about in October,
Mhm.
Quiet Down,
Mhm.
is basically an amalgam of horror, food,
And
and
probably
samurai.
Mafia if you look hard enough.
and samurai. I mean, but you know, it's fascinating that yeah, it's definitely from that, because the amount of samurai movies that were being released shot up exponentially after Seven Samurai.
hmm
And of course,
And also westerns.
and Hidden Fortress, yeah, and westerns, and Hidden Fortress, and
Hidden Fortress, which inspired Star Wars.
right, yes. So, because of his ability to make these kind of blockbusters, great blockbusters, we also managed to get things like Harakiri, or Samurai Rebellion, or Sancho the Bailiff. And
Harakiri will piss you off if you think about it too much.
it is a tragic movie. But it's just kind of fascinating that you see these kind of things erupt out of these classic things. It's the same thing that happened when Star Wars came out over here, and how everything started to change after Star Wars was exactly the same thing that Kurosawa did in Japan.
Every
in the
studio
50s.
in Hollywood wanted to make their own Star Wars,
Right.
and has been trying to make their own Star Wars ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And occasionally that works out.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
Sometimes.
Sometimes it doesn't even work out for Star Wars, though, so, you know.
Right. At times. But yeah, when you have a success, you're bound to have imitators.
Mm-hmm.
And when you this branched off into so many different things: westerns, sci-fi, action pictures. I mean, you could probably draw 100 different films just all the way back to these two stories.
Yeah.
And it's a good place to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good place to draw from.
These are two
because it's done so well.
Wonderfully entertaining movies outside of just the moral implications behind them. And there's a lot of meaning behind these two. Well, mostly Yojimbo. Sanjuro is just a lot of fun.
When I was selling DVDs and people would ask me, what do you, I've seen all the action pictures, and I would ask them, what do you like? Well, I like action pictures. I like Indiana Jones. I like, fun stuff like Star Wars. I'm a big anime fan. I was like, well, try Yojimbo.
Mm-hmm.
Because Yojimbo, all of that stuff is there.
Yeah.
May have a little more subtlety, but it's all there. And I said, everything you've been watching, all of those movies, those influences draw from this. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So where did this come from?
Akira Kurosawa.
Where did he pull this from?
He pulled this from a lot of westerns, silent westerns specifically, and history. The fact of these Ronin warriors, these masterless samurai who would go along and just do things for money so that they could live.
It's a classic story.
Right. And what Kurosawa does to that is he adds a moral compass, which is not something that most of these add.
A moral compass that keeps changing. It's in flux.
Well, he always has the intention of bringing down the criminal element. Like, that's always his goal. It's just a question of how he decides to go about it, and it's usually embedding himself like a tick and then just screwing the whole thing up from inside. Which is an interesting way to do it, not the way he ends up doing it in Sanjuro.
Right. Sanjuro stands well on its own, but it stands better if you've seen Yojimbo.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you watch them back to back, it's actually quite a bit of fun.
I watched Sanjuro last night. I had never seen it.
You'd never seen it, really?
I had seen Yojimbo, but I'd never seen Sanjuro.
You had said you saw it decades ago, so I thought you had.
Well, Yojimbo I saw decades ago. I saw it more or less the way I recommended it to people. Somebody recommended it to me.
Okay.
And so Sanjuro I had not seen, but I watched it last night. It's not very long.
No, it's like 85 minutes or something, 90 minutes. They're both kind of short.
It's 98 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's very, very thin story.
Yeah. And Yojimbo's under 2 hours.
Yeah.
Barely, but...
It's, just barely. But honestly, I like both of them. But if I had to choose, I'd say I like Sanjuro. Maybe because Sanjuro's a little easier to follow.
Yeah,
because it's much simpler.
It's like saying you enjoy watching the The Return of the Jedi more than The Empire Strikes Back, even though The Empire Strikes Back is a better film.
Let me put it this way. Yojimbo was the first, when I was getting ready for this, Yojimbo was the first movie I watched after Tenet.
Oh.
Now, anything after Tenet...
Anything after Tenet is A, going to make more sense than anything else you've ever seen in your entire life. And just be a welcome respite if it has any kind of linear storyline. Like,
and for the record, I did not like Tenet. It was
liked
overcomplicated, and
I liked it well enough. I think I gave it 3 stars when I have a review of that up on my site.
I'm working on I have a review I haven't posted. It's 2 stars.
Yeah. I think I gave it 2.5 or 3, and it's.
I'm always the guy who's following the trajectory of the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a narrative is the train that you get on, and the director guides you through it, and you're noticing the sights as you're going along. That's just how I see things. If I'm in the dark, if I'm going back and I'm checking things and I'm going back and rewatching scenes and I don't understand what's going on, then the director hasn't done their job.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Tenet. If I have to do extra work, like I was telling you before we got on mic, if I have to do extra work, which is I had a YouTube video running while I was watching the movie of a guy explaining the plot to me. If I have to go and do that just to understand your damn movie, you haven't done your job.
Well, it's like when David Lynch's Dune was released, and they gave you like a 50-page booklet that you had to understand before the movie started. So if you came in late, you were screwed.
Or one of the most frustrating, or the opposite is one of the most frustrating movies was, it was Back to the Future Part 3, where the characters literally keep explaining the plot to you. Every time something happens, they tell you what just happened.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. That drives me crazy. It's like, I already know this. You don't have to tell me that.
We've already been here. Let's just...
Yeah.
It's kind of
I hate extraneous dialogue like that.
It's kind of like when you're watching Mystery Science Theater 3000 and they start yelling at it because it's flashing back, and it's flashing back to the previous scene. It's like, you don't have to flash back to a scene we just got out of.
Well, in Back to the Future, it's like they established that the Doc was murdered over a matter of $80.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he goes back in time, and he's arguing with the villain over the fact the villain says, "You owe me $80."
Yeah, and it's like, and then right Marty there. Yeah.
And then Marty says, "That's the $80." I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I couldn't have figured that out on my own.
Well,
I can't stand that stuff.
Then you have to realize that is a Robert Zemeckis movie, and Robert Zemeckis goes over his entire plot every 5 minutes. Just in case you haven't figured it out. Remember, but like Forrest Gump continuously reminded you of A, his mental inability, and B, his extreme knack for being everywhere that history happened.
The plot is so much about itself for 2.5 hours, and that gets so grating. I can't stand that. I like a movie where I discover things as I go along, because it keeps surprising me. That's one of the things that drove me nuts about Revenge of the Sith, was that as you're going along in Revenge of the Sith, everything is happening as it's supposed to happen.
Right, yeah.
There's no surprises. There's nothing else. Everything happens exactly as you've been told it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That drives me crazy. It's like, okay, once we get to this point, tell me something I don't already know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons I love these two movies, is because the stakes keep changing.
Yeah.
There are different things happening. And that's... I love these two movies. They're so good.
They're phenomenal, and I relish every time I sit down to watch them, which is more frequently than with most. I've seen both of these probably about a half a dozen times or more.
Mhm.
They're just magnificent movies, and not only are they just impeccably crafted, excellent, great movies, they're fun.
They're fun to look at.
It's the same thing as Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark. They are
Mhm.
great movies.
Which, stay tuned, by the way.
Oh yeah, great movies, but also just damn entertaining all the way across. Like,
Yeah.
you don't get bogged down in the story because everything is so much fun, propelling you from one scene to the next.
I did have a problem recommending this to people because there's a certain portion of this late generation that still resists subtitles.
Yeah.
I think it's getting better because of anime.
And
But
because
there's
many shows and movies now, instead of having people speak with an accent in English, they just put in the actual language and subtitle it.
right.
That's been growing since what, like Slumdog Millionaire in '08?
I thought Princess Mononoke, because what they do is they in anime films now, what they do instead of the bad dubbing is it's redubbed with American actors who are actually acting.
Right.
So it doesn't feel like
they kind of modify the story so that it makes sense to a Western audience, because
Right.
some, especially things Hayao Miyazaki, are very Japanese stories.
I'm going to be very sad the day that man leaves this earth. Honestly,
And he's already
surprised we haven't
retired,
gotten-
but oh,
yeah, I'm surprised we haven't gotten to Mononoke. I'm surprised we haven't gotten to Miyazaki yet.
yeah.
We'll get there.
Oh yes, we will, because Spirited Away is one of my favorite animated movies of all time.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just they're a lot of fun, but you can also really sink your teeth into them as meaty movies.
Right.
And the implications of what he's doing and what that means. He walked out of both of these towns without any money.
Mhm.
When he should have been rich for saving towns left and right, but no.
Well, he's better for the experience.
His motivation
That's really what he walks out with, is just experience.
his motivation isn't money. His motivation
Right.
is actually doing good. And that's why in Sanjuro, when he just like finds out what's going on, he's like, all right, I guess I'm in this. Like,
I like the emptiness. I like the emptiness with which the character is presented, because we can put ourselves in his shoes.
Mhm.
It's a fantasy. We can put ourselves in his shoes. We put our name on his name, and it's this is how you would want to be presented
yeah,
as the lone hero. But anyway,
yeah. But that's what I have. What do we have coming up next week?
stay tuned. We're still ironing that out. We've had a few problems. This episode is a little late because
Had a few scheduling issues, few mail problems. Not male as in masculine problems, but male as in USPS problems.
Yeah. Stay tuned. We'll let you know.
So hopefully we can get one up next week, but with the way that the pandemic is increasing and getting worse, and your work hours are increasing, and the USPS is continuing to slow down because Trump messed it up.
Well, the I'm still on the Netflix mail service, and so without there are days when I'm not getting any mail at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get something through the mail from Netflix, sometimes it may not show up. And I was like, okay, well maybe I can just rent the movie somewhere. And I went to a place, and it was like, first of all, I don't have the Criterion channel.
Oh, now see, that's
Um,
what you need because they're actually all three of them. The Zatoichi Michi. That's how I saw you, Zatoichi Michi Yojimbo.
mm.
Um,
The one Yojimbo is on HBO Max. Sanjuro is not. So Sanjuro was the one I was having trouble getting to.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's all I got.
Yeah. So whatever we have coming up, we we hope you join us for it. You can find all of our back episodes at the podbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can listen to us on iTunes and YouTube. Hit the like and the subscribe, and make sure you have the notifications activated. You can find us on Twitter at pod_bay. And Patreon at the same handle. We thank you very much for joining us, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
Baxter's over there. Rojo's there. Me right in the middle.
Where you the what?
Crazy bell ringer was right. There's money to be made in a place like this.
If you're thinking what I suspect, I tell you, don't try it.
Which one of the two is the stronger?
Which one of them is stronger? Well, the Rojos, especially Ramon.
I'm Miguel Rojo. I want to talk to you. I'm Miguel. I hear you're hiring on men. Well, I might just be available. I gotta tell you before you hire me. I don't work cheap. Get 3 coffins ready.
Huh?
Adios, amigo. Listen, stranger. Didn't you get the idea? We don't like to see bad boys like you in town. Go get your mule. You let him get away from you?
You see, that's what I want to talk to you about. He's feeling real bad.
Huh?
My mule. You see, he got all riled up when you men fired those shots at his feet.
Hey, you making some kind of joke?
No. You see, I understand you men were just playing around, but the mule, he just doesn't get it. Of course, if you were to all apologize... I don't think it's nice, you laughing. You see, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him. Now, if you apologize like I know you're going to, I might convince him that you really didn't mean it.
I saw the whole thing. You killed all 4 of them. You'll pay all right. You'll be strung up.
Who are you?
Don't fire a shot. I'm John Baxter, sheriff.
Yeah, well, if you're the sheriff, you better get these men on the ground. My mistake. Work orphans.